Russia is stress testing the West, and the West is failing. The West is failing very badly. The United States is, Europe is, NATO is, the United Nations is. It's bad all around. Okay, let's start here. The U.S. mission to NATO, we strongly condemn, we have strong words, strongly condemn Russia's violation of Estonian airspace. We stand firmly with our Estonian allies and will defend every inch of NATO territory. If that were true, if you were to defend every inch of NATO territory, nothing would have happened in Estonia. They only did Estonia because you stopped doing it, defending every inch of territory in Poland. And then so they did it in Poland, and then they did it in Romania, and then they did it in Estonia, and so on and so forth, and it's going to keep going. Estonia invokes NATO Article 4 after their airspace violates Russian Russian MiG-31s. The map shows the flight path of the 3 Russian MiG-31s that violated Estonian airspace near Vandaloo Island. Vandaloo Island's out here somewhere, and then they just kept going within Estonian airspace. You could say, oh, well, look how close it was. Yeah, but why did they turn the transponders off and then fly into Estonian airspace? Now, they didn't go after Tallinn. They didn't go in deep inland or anything like that. So if they were shot down, they could say, well, look at that. They were just trying to stay on their path. They were just slightly off course. And look how the Europeans are hostile warmongers. Perhaps. But what about Poland? Why didn't you do something when what happened with Poland happened? Like, this should have been the trigger point to cause no more. Okay. The map shows the flight path of the 3 Russian MiG-31s that violated Estonian airspace near Vandaloo Island on September 19th. They remained there for nearly 12 minutes with transponders off, no radio contact. NATO Baltic Air Policing F-35s responded. Russia's 4th airspace violation just of Estonia this year. Okay, so Russia's denying it. On September 19th, 3 Russian MiG-31 fighters made a scheduled flight from Karelia to an airfield in the Kaliningrad region. Marko Mikkelsen, he is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Estonian Parliament, says this is a complete lie. Russian fighter jets violated NATO's airspace for 12 minutes despite clear signaling from Italian F-35s. Okay, so they're going to lie about it. They're going to, like, there's nothing new here. They just lie about things. The UN Security Council will meet on Monday at Estonia's request following a recent violation of airspace by Russian fighter jets, and nothing will happen. Again, Russia is stress testing the international order, and they're pushing on it to see, like, it looks like it's strong, but it's really not. Peter Pavel says that he's the prime minister from Czechia. Peter Pavel says that NATO must be ready to shoot down Russian jets after repeated airspace violations. On September 19th, MiG-31s breached the Estonian airspace. He says Russia will behave as far as we will allow it. President Pavel, isn't he? Yeah, President. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Russia will behave as far as we allow it. That's right. That's exactly the way it works. It works individually on an individual level, and it works on national level. You get what you tolerate. If you put up with this, you get more of it. People are acting, says Andrew Perpetua, like the Russians first violated NATO airspace a few days ago. Bros, they've been violating airspace regularly for the entire war. Yeah, and they just keep incrementally ratcheting this up. He said shooting down a misbehaving missile or an errant drone would have meant nothing to Russia. People are saying things like, well, that would have caused World War III. No, it would have meant nothing to Russia. It would have set a boundary. It would have prevented what we see today. But because, frankly, those early incursions were likely technical errors of some sort and genuine accidents, unlike the current ones, which are 100% intentional. Now, that's commentary, but I think it's true commentary. Again, Czech President Pavel and Lithuanian Defense Minister called for Russia's military aircraft violating NATO airspace to be shot down. Pavel calls such incursions grounds for activation of defense mechanisms, and she said that Turkey did exactly that in 2015. And then you didn't hear boo from Russia about what Turkey shot down. If NATO answers to the next question of provocation will not be decisive, NATO will cease to exist. Up to now, NATO has failed. They came out and ran uh, Secretary General Rutte came out and said, "I'm so proud of how well they handled this. They shot down these four drones, and NATO has handled itself really well." No, it really hasn't. It really, really hasn't. And this is from a former deputy prime minister, minister of the defense and foreign affairs, and foreign member of the European Parliament saying this, that, if this doesn't happen up till now, NATO's failed. If they don't do it now, it's pretty much over. That's why I put the grave of NATO on the last thumbnail yesterday, and the open grave of the USSR. Go back and look at that thumbnail. NATO Article 5 requires an armed attack as a trigger. 2022, NATO's strategic concept explicitly included hybrid operations and cyber attacks under the definition of an armed attack. By all logic, Article 5 should have been invoked after the Russian drone attack on Poland, but we ignored it because we didn't want to face it, and now we're seeing more, and we're going to see more. Jessica Berlin says, first NATO refused to defend Ukraine's skies. Now we refuse to defend our own. That's pretty insightful. Now, what's going on in Russia? Colonel General Alexander Lapin was removed as commander of the Army Group North and the Leningrad Military District last month. He has now been fired from the military entirely, which is too bad because I like this guy. This guy was someone that I would hope that the Russians would put in charge of a cross. Why? Well, he's kind of terrible. Former commander of Russia's Center and North Army groups, Alexander Lapin, has been dismissed from the Russian military. This is the same general who failed to defend the Kursk region. That's point one in his favor. Lost Vovchansk. That's two. Became infamous for his clashes with Prigozhin and Kadyrov. I mean, I'm not going to give him a full point, maybe a half point for that, but that's fun to watch. Lapin was despised by pro-war Z bloggers who accused him of staggering incompetence. That's points 3, 4, and 5. I mean, I'm going to give him full credit for that. Instead of the front, he's been given an honorable exile, a position as assistant to Tartastan's leader. Now the general will oversee contract soldiers and the social adaptation of veterans. Okay, so he's getting put out the pasture. It's a quiet retirement under the wing of Shoigu clan, a safe place to lie low and stay out of the way. The Wall Street Journal named Lapin as among those responsible for Ukraine's breakthrough into the Kursk region. Again, I kind of liked him for that reason. Okay, some other follow-up stories. America's Intervision entrant Vasi has told the BBC that she has withdrawn from the song contest in Moscow due to an unforeseen emergency. Earlier, the original U.S. entrant, B. Howard, withdrew due to family circumstances. So America would have been the only nation that's not leaning authoritarian. Well, maybe, you could probably argue India's okay. But of all the Intervision contestants, they're mostly authoritarian nations. The American singer pulled out. Russia's singer said, "Don't vote for me," and Vietnam won. So, and Intervision is like the knockoff version of Eurovision. Okay, in America, in response to what? So the Pentagon informs European diplomats some time ago that the U.S. will partially halt military assistance to Baltic nations and NATO states bordering Russia. Don Bacon, representative from, I want to say Nebraska. Is that right? I think it's Nebraska. Yeah, Nebraska. In response, the House voted by voice unanimously to increase Baltic Security Initiative spending. The Pentagon is out of step and at odds with Congress on this. The Undersecretary for Policy has a 1930s worldview. The only people happy with him is Putin and his team. The Undersecretary for Policy is the same guy that's talking about don't focus on Europe, focus only on China, and now maybe not even focusing on China, but just focusing on the American hemisphere. Donald Trump threatened Afghanistan with consequences if the Taliban refused to return U.S. control over the Bagram Air Base that we got out of at Trump's behest and that Biden actually completed, and it was a very terrible ending to that, where it was a really bad black eye for the United States. But Trump just tweeted this out: if Afghanistan doesn't give Bagram Air Base back to those that built it, the United States of America, bad things are going to happen. President DJT. Okay. To which Gary Kasparov said, so give it back to Russia? Plausible demand. But to those that built it, I think maybe it was originally built by Russia. I'm not 100% on that. Taliban replied to Trump, we're ready to fight another 20 years. Again, credibility. Credibility matters. Afghan's defense minister, Mohammed Mujahid, mocked Trump's demand to return Bagram Air Base. Quote, our answer is this. If you do not leave and want to take bases, we are ready to fight you for another 20 years. Okay. All right, just wrapping up, winding down on this day in 1939, Soviets and Nazis signed the Voroshilov-Kostring Protocol. Article 5 stated the Russian army will help German forces destroy Polish units where requested as German units withdraw from areas within the agreed Soviet allocation zone. But this kind of Article 5 is okay, says Darth Putin. Yeah. Here's an idea. Okay, so I showed you this yesterday just as a thought, right? Here's an idea, says Adam Kinzinger. He's a former Republican congressman. The West has held about $300 billion of Russian assets. They should release $2 billion a day to Ukraine until Russia stops the war or they disperse it all. Then Russia will have to accept that the war has additional real costs per day. Now, of course, there are some legitimate legal issues that could get in the way of doing something like that. But the point of that was that you have to make this painful for Russia because otherwise they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. Okay, so this, I thought, wow, okay, it's kind of like that. The U.S. Senate proposes quarterly transfers, like this is an official proposal, quarterly transfers of Russian frozen assets to Ukraine. A bipartisan group of senators has introduced a bill that would oblige Washington to transfer a portion of these funds to Kyiv every 90 days. The U.S. Secretary of State is expected to allocate at least $250 million per quarter. Okay, it's not the same. I mean, $2 billion a day as opposed to $250 million per quarter. It's not at the same scale, but there's actually a thought that might be something that they would do. Again, you know, there's legal ramifications of this, so it might not be the best thing, but the point is that the Russians need to feel the pain. Okay, last little bit. I'm going to show you Twitter accounts of Putin's cronies are now nothing but posts of Charlie Kirk and further partnering with MAGA. Are Americans really falling for this? I'm afraid that's going to happen. They are going to largely think, oh, see how Russia is supporting this? They must be the good guys. Just it pains me to see this. All right, my friends, that's all that I have other than a shout out to Joyce Denver. Joyce Denver is a graduate student and a YouTube member. And thank you, Joyce, for your support, and for everyone else who's watching. Put your comments below. I try to read as many as I can. Thank you for the likes. If you hit the like button, that really does help the videos spread. So thank you for that. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you more than anything else for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.